Hey guys, welcome to this edition of Answer This. Let's get to the questions.
Hey John, my question is, what would you recommend or suggest for people who have to stay north for the winter to keep their horses fit without going too stir crazy?
All right, so the answer is get out. There's plenty of good states in the South. You don't have to be there. I mean, come on. But realistically, I know that's not what everybody can do. We have jobs and lives and families. So it's a really good question. Being stuck up north, I did it for a long time. It is a difficult thing to do when you're going to do horses. And I somewhat jokingly say that if I had to stay in the north, I think I might not do horses. But I would. Um, so when I used to be there, I think the thing is you got to keep it fun and light and lively. As far as just keeping horses fit in the north, I think it's showing up on a regular basis, not letting the weather keep you from doing the things with your horse that you need to do. I know when I lived up there, a big part of the problem was actually just getting turnout for the horses sometimes and being dedicated to the fact that, look, you've committed to this animal. You have to make sure that it gets out. Sometimes you can turn them out in the indoor. I'm always a little nervous about that because the horses can be a little silly sometimes and run and slip. But you just got to get them out and keep them moving, keep them exercised. I think it's more, to be honest, some people might argue, and obviously it depends on the size of the ring that you have to work with, the indoor. But really, you're probably just trying to maintain what you had through the summer more than build a lot of fitness through the winter. You're not going to build fitness in an indoor, but you can maintain it by keeping the horses moving, working regularly. Let's hear our next question. I think it'll pertain to this a little bit further.
Hi John, I have another question about the winters in the north. What do you think would be a good, I don't know if you call it a program, but something that could keep the horses moving? A lot of indoors don't have a ton of room to set up courses, but maybe some canter pull exercises or just something that keeps them sharp when you have to do sometimes 4 or even 5 months in the indoor.
Yeah, so I didn't want to get too much into the training with the first question because I had a feeling that this one might be coming next, which is what are the exercises that we really can work on in the indoor? So let's be realistic. We're talking about gymnastics, right? I think you want to make sure that you're setting up a lot of different exercises, not sort of leaving one line in the middle of the ring and jumping the same thing over and over and over. If it gets boring for you, it gets boring for your horse. So when I lived up north, I did a lot of trotting gymnastics. Usually what I try to do is I have one trot gymnastic down the center of my ring. From there, then usually most indoors will have enough room that you can land and canter through the end of the ring, usually pick up a fence or two in canter. If you've got enough room, you might also be able to get a couple of related lines. But again, change it up. I also like to put a lot of narrows and skinnies in the indoor. One, obviously it helps you work on your accuracy questions, but the other thing is you can usually fit a little bit more safely in a ring if they're narrow, skinny fences than you can if they're big, wide fences. You don't want to only jump skinnies, but it's something you can do. And you can also set up with some barrels, you can set up some corners to practice over. And my real go-to when I'm doing a clinic in an indoor, especially on the second day after we've done our gymnastic work, is I will take a Liverpool or a blue tarp and make myself a Liverpool out of that and do like a faux coffin. So you have the open portable fold-up Liverpool as your ditch, and then I set a rail vertical jump on either side of it and have a combination that way. It's just something different. It gets tough, I think the big thing I would say for these questions of what to do in the wintertime is, and I was guilty of this when I used to live there when I was younger, don't get stuck into that routine of, oh, it's cold outside, so I have to be in an indoor. There are plenty of days when it's decent enough that you can get out, you can hack in the fields when the ground maybe isn't quite frozen all the way, or if there's enough snow, you can actually hack through the snow. That's actually going to be great exercise for the horses anyway. Keeps their legs nice and tight, for one, but also having to trudge through that snow does help just take advantage of those rare days when you do have decent weather and get out. Get outside as much as you can. And when you are stuck in an indoor, just change it up. There's a lot of different gymnastic exercises, um, you know, that you can work on, and just remember your distances are always going to be a little shorter inside, but keep it fresh. Keep changing it. Don't get stuck leaving that line in there and get sort of lazy yourself. Because again, if you're bored, your horse is bored. All right, let's get on to the next question.
Hey, John. Long-time listener, first-time caller. James from Michigan. Wanted to see what you would suggest as the preferred firearm to eradicate water moccasins in the Central Florida area during the summer months.
All right, James. Well, at least we're talking about summer now, right? All this talk about winter, it's in February now, getting a little bit depressing. So I'm glad to be talking about summer again. Um, so I think the first thing is make sure that you're actually shooting a water moccasin. There's a lot of snakes in Central Florida that pretend to be water moccasins, pretend to be, fake poisonous snakes, but they actually aren't. If you do have a water moccasin, I would recommend not shooting it, because I'm not even sure you're allowed to shoot a water moccasin in Florida. I'm not sure that they're not protected. I don't know what the rules are. But if I was going to shoot a water moccasin, I would probably choose a little pistol called the Judge. It shoots a 410 shotgun shell, or a 30 caliber. I think that's right. Bullet. Anyway, I wouldn't recommend shooting the water moccasins. I'd recommend running away as fast as possible, because those are scary. But this little Judge pistol is pretty cool for you gun enthusiasts out there. So anyway, fun question. Let's get to the next one.
Hi, John. Greetings from Illinois. My name is Sherry. I'm a hunt groom. Occasionally, I can hunt my horse. He is a Frisian Shire Cross. I really like him. He's got a lot of great qualities. He's got a great mind, and he's brave. His drawbacks are that he's a little bit slow on his feet, and he can be unbalanced in the sloppy conditions especially. He actually went down on me once this year in the muddy, icy conditions. So I really want to work on maybe some gymnastics over this winter to help him become more balanced and coordinated. So if you have any suggestions, I've got open ears. Thank you.
All right, Sherry. It sounded a bit like a dating profile there at first. He had his positives and then his drawbacks. So, sounds like he's probably a really lovely, good horse. So great question. Again, sort of on the theme for today of what do we do through the winter months to improve our horses and keep them going. And I think you're on the right track thinking that he probably needs some gymnastics. Think for horses that are going to be out competing on terrain, like event horses or hunt horses, or even trail horses, footwork is the most important thing. When you're dealing with horses that are going to be in a show ring, jumping big fences, then you need scope. But for us who event, or like yourself that hunts, footwork is a really important thing. So with your horse, who sounds like he's just a little bit slow-footed sometimes and a little clumsy, I would be doing, again, like I was telling Jamie earlier, a lot of trotting gymnastics. So my trot poles are 4 feet apart, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, depending on the stride of my horse. So for a horse like yours, I think where I would start would be with 4 trotting poles, 4 feet apart. From the 4th pole, I would then go 8 to 9 feet to another rail, so that I could trot through those trotting poles confidently and comfortably. So it'd be 5 trot poles altogether. That's 4 trot poles 4 feet apart, and then 8 to 9 feet to the 5th trot pole. I'd be trotting through it from the 4 trot poles, 4 feet, 4 feet, 4 feet, 4 feet, and then my 8 to 9 feet over the last trot pole off of each rein. Once I mastered that, then I would have you go ahead and make that 5th trot pole into a small cross rail, so that you could trot in, you could trot those 4 rails, take 1 step between each rail, and then 2 steps and over the cross rail until my horse got confident with that. From there, I would continue to build that gymnastic grid by adding an 18-foot distance to a small vertical. Depending on the horse, I might put a placing rail in there at 9 feet, so it would be the 4 trot poles, 8 to 9 feet to my X, 9 feet to a rail on the ground, and then another 9 feet to that vertical. depending on the size of your ring, sometimes, believe it or not, 18 feet can actually be a little bit long in an indoor. So be open to adjusting that distance slightly for your horse. I don't think you should say, well, it has to be 18 feet and that's what it must be. You need to be flexible and work on your horse's footwork without setting a distance that maybe he or she just struggles with a little bit. So if it has to move down to 17 feet or out to 19 feet to trot in, depending on your horse and the size of your ring, I think that's fine. Once I mastered that one stride, then I probably would go ahead and then somewhere between 19 and 21 feet, add a third fence. That could be a small vertical or an oxer. So in the end, you would have 4 trotting poles, 8 to 9 feet to your X, 18 feet to your vertical, 19 to 21 feet to your oxer. And again, I'd probably have a placing rail in between those 2 one strides to help my horse with their footwork. That would be sort of my basic go-to gymnastic grid to start with. But again, anytime that you can add in some trotting poles, anywhere in the ring, even just single trotting rail, so that you're riding with balance. I think the other piece that, doesn't get talked about a lot is make sure that you are actually working on your connection and your ability to communicate with your horse. Okay, so that's something that you have to build over time. It requires soft hands that your horse can trust, and that means soft elbows, soft shoulders, soft fingers. And that doesn't mean abandoning them. It means connected, that your horse wants to communicate with them. I think the best way I heard that described was, imagine like you want to hold your child's hand as you cross the street, and you want a firm grip so that it's secure. You don't want it to be loose and floppy so your kid doesn't know that you're there, right? But you're not crushing that hand either, and that's a little bit the way it would be when you're riding your horse. You want a firm contact with the reins to the bit in the horse's mouth, but not hard. You don't want to be punishing the horse that way. But if you don't have a good, solid feel, then, especially if you're on a horse that maybe lacks a little bit of coordination, if you don't have that good, solid connection, you can't help influence the balance at all. Obviously, there's some things when you're riding out on cross country or out hunting that I'm sure you're aware of. Like, your horse needs the freedom of its head and neck when it's going up and down terrain, but you do need that balance and that connection, which can be built through these gymnastic exercises. So I'd work on that gymnastic. That'd be a good starting point, and then maybe some trotting poles throughout the ring, or even being able to canter to some poles around the ring. Work on your turning and your steering while you're in the indoor. And again, just be careful, because sometimes those indoor arenas do freeze. So even if the top layer seems good, the base can be frozen, and you want to be careful that you're not spinning around and turning too sharp in there and, risking having a slip in the indoor. That's really no fun. So anyway, I hope that exercise helps you out, and thank you everybody for joining me for this wintry edition of Answer This.